Welcome to the Computer Literacy Center's online instructional videos. Today we're going to utilize if functions in Google Sheets. My name is Jimmy LeBaron and I'll be guiding you through this tutorial. In this video we will use if functions to return conditional values by using proper syntax and logical operators, create nested if functions for more complex scenarios, and use and or functions. Before we can talk about what if functions are, we need to understand logical tests. A logical test is when the application is given a specific condition to meet and returns either true or false. The main logical tests are equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. We will also utilize the and or functions in our if formulas. An if function is one of the most popular logic tests. It allows us to compare two values. Let's go through the general syntax and formatting of an if function. First, you have the logical test. This is the condition we'd like to determine true or false. Then you have the value to return if that condition is met or true, and finally the value to return if the condition isn't met or false. Let's look at an example. If you'd like to follow along, go ahead and find the start file bundled in this module. Download the if function practice sheet and save it as your own. For this example, we're helping a teacher find out if some of her students passed or failed her math class. To start, let's select the cell we want our functions and results to show in. For this, we'll select cell G4. Then we enter in the beginning of the equation by typing an equal sign, and then if to show that this is an if statement. The if does not need to be capitalized as Sheets will give you suggestions. If you accept the suggestion by pressing Tab or clicking the drop-down, it will put an open parenthesis for us. Otherwise, you will need to type it. Now let's begin the logic test. In this case, we want to find out which students passed the class with their final composite score and which students failed. For this, we can either enter the column and row number of the student's score that we want to analyze, or to make it a bit quicker, we can simply click on that cell. So let's select E4 for student 1's score. Now we need to enter the logical operator. In this case, we will use the less than symbol followed by the value 60 in order to find out if their score is less than 60. Then put a comma to separate this logical test from the next values, which are what Sheets will return when the argument is true, followed by the output for if the argument is false. Because we put the sign as less than, we will enter the value if true as fail, and the value if false as pass. It is important to separate them by a comma, and since we have text we want to output, we should put each of these outputs between quotation marks. To finish our equation, we put a closing parenthesis on the end and hit enter. It now shows that student 1 failed his test. We want to do the same analysis to the other 10 students. To make it a bit faster, we are going to grab the fill handle, which is this little box in the bottom right-hand corner of our highlighted cell, and drag that down. This will intelligently fill in the other cells with their respective formulas. Now we have our answers for which students failed or passed the exam. To evaluate more than one logical test or condition and return different values based on that, we can use a nested if function. A nested if function has if statements inside of it as the outputs for the first formula. Having more than one if statement means evaluating more than one logical test. To show how this is done, let's look at an example. We'll be finding out the students' letter grades on their composite score this time. For our nested if function, we will start out the same as if we were doing a normal if function. To begin, select I4 and enter in our equal sign, then type if and an open parenthesis. Now we will add our first logical test. Select E4 less than 60. This tells Sheets to evaluate whether the value of cell E4 is less than 60. Now, after a comma, comes the value to return if that logical test is true, which is the letter F between quotation marks to show that a 60 translates to an F letter grade. After we have our first value and quotation marks around it, type a comma, and then type if and an open parenthesis again to start our second logical test. Select cell E4 and then type less than as our logical operator. This time we will type 70 as our score instead of 60. Finish the logical test portion by typing a comma. Since we want text as the output for the true argument, type an open quotation mark, then type D, and close the quotation marks. To finish assigning a letter grade to each number value, we are going to repeat this 2 more times with the score as 80 and the grade as C, and then with the score as 90 and the grade as B. This last time, instead of nesting another if statement, we're going to close it with a comma and add our value if false as an A. This basically means that if the grade isn't an F, D, C, or B, we know that it has to be an A. In order to close off this function, we need to have an equal number of closing parentheses as we do opening parentheses. You can count them and type them in by hand, or you can just press Enter and Sheets will fill them in for you. The first grade for student 1 is an F. Now let's grab the fill handle in the bottom right corner of our cell and drag it all the way down to the bottom of our list. This fills our nested formula into the subsequent rows. Now we have letter grades for all students. We can create even more specific evaluations using and or functions. For example, if we have 2 logical tests, A and B, we can check if they are both true by using the and function. If A and B are both true, then the and function will also return true. We can also test if either is true by using the or function. If A or B returns true, then our or function will also return true. Our final task is to find out which students passed both of their exams and which students passed at least one of their exams. To do this, we are going to use the and or functions, which allow us to combine 2 simple logical tests into one complex logical test. To find out if they pass both exams, we are going to set up the and function by selecting K4 and typing an equal sign and with an open parenthesis. Now let's enter our logical tests. For this, we want to see if they pass both the first and second exam. Click on the first exam score, cell C4, then add the greater than or equal to symbols because we want to include 60 as a passing grade, followed by 60. Now we need to include our second exam to be sure they pass both. Add a comma, then the second exam score with the same logical test, greater than or equal to 60. End the and function with a closing parenthesis, and press Enter, and we get either true or false as our output. Now let's grab the fill handle in the bottom right corner of our cell and drag it all the way down to the bottom of our list. So we see that and or functions can stand alone and will either output true or false depending on if their conditions are met. But what if we want to have custom values displayed for true or false? Or if we want to nest these with other logical operators? We can do all of that by combining what we've learned so far. Let's begin with our final or function. Start by selecting cell M4 and typing an equal sign, if. Now add or as our logical test. Replicate the same logical test as our and function, checking that C4 is greater than or equal to 60, or D4 is greater than or equal to 60. Finish the or with the closing parenthesis, and then give our custom value if true, yes, between quotation marks, and your value for false, no. Let's fill in the rest of the boxes using the fill handle to get the rest of our values. So in summary, we have used if functions to get various outputs based on the results of logic tests. We used regular if functions and nested if functions. We also used and or functions to combine separate logic tests. Thank you so much for watching. For more information on Google Sheets and other computer literacy topics, visit our website at weber.edu/CLC.